Good morning, everyone. This is the Fat Health Teacher. It is bright and early. As I told you, was on vacation for the last several days. I got to meet my partner's family. Well, I've met them all, but close quarters, everybody in the same house, and then spending a bunch of time on the lake and all of that good stuff. And it was a lot of fun. I had to come back early because tomorrow is my first day of work, so I actually gave myself a 2-day leeway since. It was a 14-hour drive, and I wasn't sure I was going to do it all in one trip. Um, One of the things that I do while I'm driving is I listen to my podcasts, and then I do audio notes in order to remind myself of the things that I'm thinking of, and be able to, you know, make some sense of things. Now, something that I've been struggling with over the last week or so is like this mental fog kind of stuff. It could be a side effect of some other things that I will probably share at a later date. I'm hoping it goes away soon because it is really irritating to not be able to be as articulate as I would like to be, or as I feel like I normally am. The big one that I wanted to focus on right now is kind of the first of the notes that I've listened to, and this was prompted by the Melania Trump thing. So, if you have not been paying attention, the Republican National Convention is occurring, and Trump has taken, so that would be Donald Trump, has been given or has taken the Republican National Convention nomination. Um, his wife, Melania Trump, was one of the earlier speakers at the convention. And just in general, some things that I'm noticing, and I'm curious to see if they will also apply to the Democratic convention. And I would guess that in some ways they will, and that is the level of rhetoric. Um, so let me kind of get to the point, and then I'll expand on what my thoughts are here. During Melania Trump's speech, there were multiple lines which seemed very familiar to people who were listening. And they were familiar because they were almost word for word from a 2008 speech that was given by Michelle Obama at at the Democratic National Convention. And it was very interesting to see the responses to this. So you had some people who were like, that's plagiarism, and I wouldn't be able to get away with that if I were in school and I submitted that as a speech that I had done, which is 100% accurate. In fact, if we look up the definition of plagiarism, give me a moment, I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so according to the internet, plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. Now, this happens. So, what could have happened is that the speech was done, she gave it, and during the speech, she could have credited Michelle Obama. But that's not going to fly when you're at the Republican National Convention because everybody's supposed to hate Obama that's coming from that side. And they're certainly not supposed to support Michelle. Um, Now, there's seems to be a little bit of leeway here as far as intellectual rights and being paid to do stuff. So my initial reaction here was that, well, her speechwriters did the plagiarizing, and her speechwriters need to get in trouble. But initially, that was not the case because she was saying that she had written this speech herself. It now appears, this is several days later, that one of the speechwriters on the Trump campaign is going to take the fall for this speech. So we know that people do speeches for other people all the time. And as I was saying, when you had the different parties responding, you you could see a huge difference in party affiliation or based on party affiliation just by looking at the responses. So people from the Democratic side or the more liberal leaning side or just any anti-Trump side were very, very quick to judge. Some people said that she should keep her mouth shut because she did a better job as a model, which I think is inappropriate. So people went after her for that. People went after her for being an immigrant. not so much that she's an immigrant and that's a bad thing, but that Trump seems to be very anti-immigrant, and yet his immigrant wife, who is not totally fluent in English, was giving this speech. And again, according to some of the stuff that I've read, she knows something like 5 languages. The fact that she has a little bit of difficulty and that she's not, and that she seems to stumble over some of the English language does not mean that she is a bad person or that she's unintelligent or any of those other things. And yes, she has worked as a model, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have thoughts that are valid and etc. Anyway, so if you looked at the stuff that was coming from the right, we had this whole slew of things. People were blaming Clinton, which doesn't make any sense. People were saying, oh, well, it's not that big a deal. It was only 17 words or a couple minutes out of a 17-minute speech or something along those lines. I don't understand what the problem is. Or these are common things to say, which could be true, to say that you were raised with values and stuff like that. But if you actually look at the two things side by side, there's way too much similarity. And as people pointed out, if I were to submit a paper that had a section of text that was that similar to an existing section of text, I would fail. Okay? It wouldn't be a bad grade. I would get a 0. And I would be reported for plagiarism. And then part of me was like, well, I tend towards benefit of the doubt, so maybe she was trying to get ideas for speeches and she was watching a whole bunch of speeches and those items resonated with her, and then without even thinking about it, she kind of included them in her speech. Well, I can tell you as a college student that there is software that our professors use in order to check our papers for plagiarism. In fact, this software will detect any paper or any plagiarism. So if I submitted a paper last semester, that gets entered into the system, and then if I submit a paper this semester using my own words and I don't cite myself, or I don't say, hey, I pulled this from my other paper, that type of thing, I can actually get nailed for plagiarizing my own work. And plagiarizing is about giving the people credit for what they've created. So what's been happening is that it's I'm going to actually see if I can find this clip. I probably can. Princess Bride. So if you're not familiar with this story, a girl is kidnapped and this guy who is going after her to rescue her has to basically face 3 trials. And the first trial is a swordsman, second trial is a trial of strength. When he gets to the third guy is Vizzini, and he can't do either. So they decide to come up with a trial of intellect. And what Vizzini ends up doing...
What in the world can that be?
What? Where?
And then he's very happy with himself, and it turns out that it didn't matter. Kind of what it feels like is happening right now is, yes, it was plagiarism, but, oh, don't worry about that. Or one of the things that I saw is, well, Biden plagiarized, and Obama plagiarized, and so-and-so plagiarized, and I don't see why they didn't get in trouble. We've also seen this with the email scandal. I don't have enough information at this point to make a whole lot of choice, because trying to wade through the rhetoric has been very difficult. But with Clinton and the email. So they decided not to prosecute Clinton or to go after her for the way she handled confidential email. And what the right has been saying is, well, if this had been blah, 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 then they would have been dishonorably discharged, or they would have been put in jail, or things along those lines. But because she has privilege and all of that, she's getting away with it. This is not helpful. I don't know that it's accurate, but I will say this, that comparing A to B is not a good thing. Like, we need to focus on the issues. So if Hilary did things that are questionable, unfortunately, with the way that the law works out, is they decide not to press charges. So we need to move on. And I would say that even if it were Trump, even if it were, yeah, we need to move on. We just need to move on. Continually trying to beat this dead horse. It doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like the people who are going after Obama saying that he wasn't a citizen because they claim that he was born in Africa and all that other stuff. The people who were in charge of making that call made the call, and we need to move on. It's done. I mean, he's been in office for going on 8 years. Why are we continuing to be ridiculous about this kind of stuff? It is my suspicion, which I don't think is unfounded, that we do these things because we want to rile people up, we want to get emotion involved, and if we can get emotion involved, if we can get people distracted, then they're not going to be thinking for themselves, they're not going to be looking for the facts, because it's going to be too hard to find them. So another example of distraction is I recently saw a political cartoon, and in this cartoon it shows a very butch Michelle Obama, complete with a groin bump in order to indicate that she's trans, which is another thing that I've seen in the conservative sphere, which is incredibly disturbing, is attacking the person instead of actually going after, what they've done. And again, it's to activate emotion so we can decrease our logic. They use inflammatory language like steal and kill and murder. I gotta say, when the whole campaigning thing started, I was really excited about Bernie, because Bernie didn't seem to be willing to kind of do what everybody else was doing. He didn't seem to be willing to attack, right? Or use attack ads or use derogatory language or any of those things. But as the election progressed, or as the competition progressed, it got bad. And it wasn't necessarily coming from him, it was coming from his supporters. But I've seen things like Hilary instead of Hilary. And people who are saying, I absolutely 100% refuse to vote for her. And I understand that during an election cycle, that when people are campaigning, that they need to differentiate between themselves and their opponents, and that it's really hard to be that upstanding person and to say, I refuse to play your game, because people who refuse to play the game tend to not be successful. But I was really disappointed when it seemed that the Sanders campaign started to kind of play the politics game. What I've seen coming out of the RNC over the last couple of days has been very disturbing. There is a lot of, as I said, inflammatory rhetoric. There is a lot of misinformation. So if you go in and you take a look at the claims that are being made, these claims are flat out false, and it's disturbing. So I'm interested in seeing what happens to the Democratic National Convention, because I want to see if the rhetoric is as strong, or if it's more grounded in accurate and correct interpretations of the facts that are out there. I don't like this whole moving the focus away from what is actually happening. And I will give you a more personal example of this type of thing. So at one of the schools that I previously worked at, we had a year where we got our schedules for who was going to be in what class and the size of our classes and all of that good stuff. And I had a class that had something like 40 students in one class, and the same name class for a different class period had 12. And this didn't make any sense. And when I went to the person who was responsible for scheduling, the only response I got was, it used to be worse. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not going to fix the problem. I don't care that it used to be worse. It is still not okay. And I have a lot to say on some of the recent shootings and that type of thing, so I'm going to save that for another video. But I don't care if it used to be worse, right? I don't care if we used to hang black people on the street. I don't care if we used to burn crosses. I'm not going to be grateful that now we're only shooting them. Okay? That doesn't make any sense. And it is not appropriate. So, do I believe that progress in the correct direction is good? Yes. But I also think that we need to kind of have that line that says, until we get to this point, while progress can be applauded, it is not sufficient. It is not enough. We can't stop working until we hit that finish line. We can't stop working until we get to where we need to go. And being distracted and focusing on this crap just doesn't make any sense. Um, anyway, I think I was kind of all over the place with this speech, and I apologize. Like I said, I'm having some issues with being eloquent. I will clean it up the best I can, but until then, this is the Fat Health Teacher signing off, and I will most likely maybe talk to you tomorrow, since tomorrow is my first day at my new job. Thank you. Have a fantastic day. Oh, and my body decided that 5 a.m. was a perfect time to wake up, even though my boys are still on vacation and I have absolutely no reason to be up at that ungodly hour. Bye.